Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Wilkerson, astrophysicist at Luther College, and welcome to the first in a series of videos of something you might look for in the night sky each week. This is really just a series of videos for me to get in the habit of making a weekly video, as I'm going to do for my astronomy class this fall, summarizing some of the big ideas of what we can look for each week, and I'll share those out on this channel with everybody to see as well. I just want to get in the practice of doing this, so lucky you. Here I am practicing this. Given how we've changed our academic calendar this year, my astronomy class that normally would start in September here won't start until the beginning of October, as we moved our January term to September. And so I'll use this next several weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, to see if I can practice talking about something in the night sky in the week ahead. So this is for the week of August 24th. And so for the week of August 24th, we'll start on Mondays like that for no real reason other than I want to go through the 30th and the 31st of this next week here. And so what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about what's going on. If we like what we're doing here, we'll just keep this particular series of videos going even once class has started and we start the class videos. The idea is that we might look at something you can go out and look at in the night sky and talk a little bit about how it helps us understand our place in the universe and what we know about the universe, something historically interesting about that patch of sky or that object, and if we can relate that to what's going on in class each week once class starts, so much the better. So this week we're actually going to look at the moon and the planets. Great week to do so. The moon, as we move forward here, the moon will be moving east against the background stars. That's what it always does. You'll see it in the evening sky this week. And if you see it in the evening sky just after dark, that means it's a waxing moon. And so the moon is getting fuller as it slides to the east against the background stars. Sliding to the east means it rises later each night. So you'll watch it rising a little bit later, a little bit later. Right now, as it's waxing, it's up in the sky as it gets dark. You'll actually be able to see it in the late afternoon sky in the daylight. And so it's going to move past the constellations, it's going to move past the planets, of Jupiter and Saturn, and into the constellations of Sagittarius and Capricornus, and on into Aquarius as we end round the week out and head into next week. And so this gives us a chance to look at that sky and see it against the other objects that help us to identify some of these constellations. So on the evening of the 28th, Friday evening this week, evening for those of us here in Iowa in particular, so say 8:30 at night, 9 o'clock at night for those of us here in Iowa, the moon will be sitting directly below Jupiter. So as you look south right now, Jupiter is the brightest object in the sky, so you'll see Jupiter as a bright dot, and the next brightest dot to the east of Jupiter is Saturn. And so you'll see Saturn and Jupiter separated by a little bit there in the southern sky. They're both in the constellation of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a special constellation for me. We'll talk about that a little bit and some other things. That's where the field of sky, the open star cluster that we've been studying here, research students and I have been studying for the last 20 years now, really, sits. So we point a telescope at this region of the sky and take pictures quite regularly. And so right now, the moon, it's not great to have the moon there. So we're going to have a break in our research work later this week because the moon's going to be too close and too bright for us to be able to shoot pictures of the night sky in this region. But the moon, on Friday the 28th, the moon will be sitting right below Jupiter. So we'll say during the course of that night, the words we would use in the astronomy class coming up is we would say there'll be a conjunction between Jupiter and the moon. So more or less that would mean they have the same right ascension. Right ascension is the projection of longitude onto the night sky. So it's one of the celestial coordinates that measures the positions of things in the sky. So the moon slides under Jupiter. By the next night, by the 29th, the moon will have continued to track east, and as it continues to track east, it will have passed Saturn. So you can see it moving from one night to the next, getting fuller, moving from Jupiter past Saturn. Now, no, as it moves from Jupiter to Saturn, right in between Jupiter and Saturn, Pluto lies. So this is a really rich region of the sky. All of these things are very close in the sky, and the other coordinate that we would use, the declination, the projection of latitude onto the night sky, they're very close to each other because the more or less the solar system is a flattened plane, and so these things all fall in this disk. And when we're sitting in this disk and we look out through this disk, we see all of these things form a sort of arc on the sky, not up here, not down here, because we're all in this flattened disk here together. And so we watch the moon on the 28th, Friday the 28th, into Saturday the 29th. The moon will slide past, move from directly below Jupiter, slide past Saturn, and head on in on the 30th then. The 30th, the moon will have moved east of this pairing of Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto. Remember, Pluto, I said, right in between Jupiter and Saturn. And Pluto's just too faint, really. Pluto's right at the edge of what you'd be able to see with most small telescopes, even. So it's a pretty faint object and pretty hard to detect. But know that it's there. In between Jupiter and Saturn, the moon will have moved east of all of this action by the evening of the 30th. And so here in Iowa, and there it's sitting right in the heart of the constellation Capricornus. Now, all of these constellations, I think of Sagittarius as a relatively faint constellation. It doesn't have big bright stars like, say, the Big Dipper or Orion or Auriga or something like that. These are brighter, bigger constellations, easier to see. But Sagittarius isn't that hard to see. And we're harmed, those of us who are at mid-northern latitudes, we're harmed a good little bit by Sagittarius and all of these constellations we're talking about here today being pretty far on the southern horizon. So we have to look through a lot of air to see them. And so they look fainter than they might if we lived a little bit further south. If we could take Luther College here and move it 30 degrees south, we'd see these things a little bit brighter and higher in the sky. But given where we are, they look a little bit fainter to us. But Capricornus is even fainter than Sagittarius, and the stars are hard to see. And one of the easiest ways to find Capricornus, to me it looks kind of like this is a rough drawing, but kind of like a V shape like this, and the moon will be moving into that V, and it will be in this region on the night of the 30th, on Sunday night. And so you've got all of these faint stars around there, and that helps you. Having a bright object like the moon helps you find these other objects that you might have a hard time finding otherwise. The problem is the bright moon obscures all these faint stars, and it's really hard to see. So you'll have a hard time on Saturday evening seeing those faint stars around the moon. By the next day, the moon will have moved over here and will be sitting in the evening, probably again late evening, just after dark, mid-evening. For those of us here in Iowa, the moon will be sitting right on the Capricornus Aquarius borderline, and Aquarius is another object of constellation of faint stars. Pretty challenging stars to see. Wait yet another night, and the moon will just keep on tracking east in this direction. It'll be getting out of the way. Wait another night, and this patch of sky will start to get dark again. It won't be flooded by moonlight, and you'll be able to see some of those stars of Capricornus and Aquarius that the moon's sliding through now, remembering that Saturn is over here and Jupiter is over here now. So if you take Jupiter and Saturn and you walk from Jupiter to Saturn, the two bright objects you watched the moon slide past this week, and you move that distance again to the east and that distance again to the east, then you're in this Capricornus region, and you can start to look for some of the stars of this V of Capricornus after the moon has vacated the area. But use the moon as a guide to watch it slide past these bright stars this week, and it'll help you find some of these fainter zodiacal constellations that lie there. That maybe, my take on it is they maybe wouldn't have a name, these constellations, or they belong to other constellations, except we needed constellations there for the sun to pass through to give us our zodiac. that we have these 12 constellations of the zodiac. And so we have Capricornus and Aquarius there. So that's what I recommend looking for this week. That's what we've got. We'll shoot a video like this next week as I continue to practice doing this. And I want to thank you for helping me be part of this practice. And please pay attention to the moon sliding by the bright planets, and think about the flattened disk of the solar system as this happens this week, and enjoy the view. And we'll talk again next week. Take care, everybody.